All of us, of course, don't like the fact that we can be watched. The possibility of being tracked without your knowledge is genuinely scary. But let's be honest, at least 95% of the feeling of this in real life is nothing more than a cruel joke of our brain. So I have a question for you. Did you ever feel like you were being watched in video games? And if you answer yes, it won't be weird at all. This happens not only in horror games. Even in the most seemingly innocuous games, the environment, along with your imagination, can make you start to panic. And today, I will talk about 7 games in which the feeling of someone else's gaze will no longer be false. Garry's Mod. I must say right away that this is not type of games. This is a compilation of moments of shadow interplay in video games, which are compiled in such a way that at the beginning there are the most famous and boring examples, and at the end the most frightening and at the same time the most interesting. So be sure to watch to the end, because there are what to see. There is such a concept as single play is scary, and in many ways this is precisely because of the feeling that in single player game you are not alone at all, just that this someone is carefully hiding from you and watching you. This phenomenon was most widespread in Garry's Mod, and I simply could not help but talk about it. A large number of maps in Garry's Mod are nothing more than cities or various public places. In multiplayer they seem completely normal, but in single player the situation is quite different. When you are alone, nothing can distract you and you can concentrate on anything. For example, on ambient playing in the background, which tries to imitate life on this map. You hear the sounds of passing cars, the steps of people, but there is no one here to make the sounds except you. But nevertheless, they are still here. You are in a location that in real life would have to be filled with people, but you are all alone here. Or not quite. Perhaps someone or something is watching you right now. In a word, you have entered the liminal space, a place in an unusual state for it. Liminal spaces evoke the most unpleasant feelings in the people, often turning into fear that you are being watched. This is exactly what happens in Garry's Mod and similar games. This phenomenon is associated with the legend of the observer, a certain essence that appears in a single-player game and observes the player. And even though this is nothing more than a myth, it doesn't change the fact that liminal spaces cannot weakly play on your emotions. Half-Life. I think the Half-Life series needs no introduction. Perhaps the most mysterious character in this entire universe is G-Man. Who is he, where is he from, and why is he so interested in this war of people with the world of Zen? It soon becomes clear that Gordon Freeman plays a key role in this war, and of course, G-Man also becomes interested in his work. Periodically, through all 2 parts, he watches the main character and tries to do it in such a way that the player does not notice him. Backrooms. Now, I will not talk about any particular game. Many games and videos have been realized on this topic of backrooms, but they are all quite similar, so I will try to just briefly describe what backrooms is. So, it is the other side of our world. No one should get here. But this sometimes happens. If the world collapses before your eyes, then you will find yourself in the backrooms. This explains all the investigated disappearance of people. Backrooms, an extremely surreal space, created without any logic. The endless yellow corridors of which drive people who are there crazy. As you move through backrooms, you also move through time. But the worst thing is that a monster roams these corridors, and maybe even more than one, due to the reality of this place. You can never guess how close this creature is to you now. Or maybe it is watching you, waiting for the best moment to attack. Does anyone know if there is a way out of here? Is it possible to die here? And will you be one of them if you die? No Players Online. This is another unusual horror game. It is an imitation of an old multiplayer shooter that only has a Capture the Flag mod. The game's servers are still alive, but no one has been playing on them for a long time. You can go to one of the rooms, and here you are all alone again. All graphics and the scene, coupled with lonely hole in wind, create a very intimidating atmosphere. Just being in this game is no longer pleasant. Fortunately, nothing prevents you from starting to capture the enemy's flags, but already upon returning to the base with the flag, terrifying music will begin to play, and here some silhouettes begin to appear in the distance. Or do they not seem to you at all? As the developer himself says, the ghost in this game is the ghost of his dead wife, and it seems you disturbed her. So... So we got to the most interesting, but before, I would like to ask you to support my channel. Making new videos is quite difficult, especially when there is no motivation for it. YouTube reluctantly promotes videos from small channels like mine. If you have watched up to this point, then you are really interested. And the best way to thank Otto for this would be to subscribe to this channel. I really need your support. In addition, I have a channel on Yandex.Zen. A link to it will be in the description. Feast to Fathom. This is a horror that combines 5 stories that are not connected to each other in any way and seem to be based on real events. The essence of the game is to show you that real horrors happen in real life. There is absolutely no mysticism in them, and the monsters are the same people as we are. So far, only 2 episodes out of 5 have been released, but already from them it can be assumed that one of the main themes of the game is the persecution. In the first chapter, the main character is left at home all alone. His parents are living somewhere, and his friends are busy and cannot come to his place for the night. But the most ordinary situation turns into a nightmare, because some man begins to follow him, and his intentions are far from the best. In the second episode, the main character gets home on a long road, drive another 6 hours, and the street is already pitch dark. Unfortunately, she runs out of gas and has to stop at a gas station, where she gets caught in the eye of some group of bandits. On the rest of the road, something goes wrong with the car and eventually it stalls. The girl manages to get to the motel, but she will be first there as well. I hope I managed to intrigue you, but you will find out more for yourself. Animeopolis. This is a wall horror dedicated to liminal spaces and the fear of being watched. According to the plot, you come to a city called Animeopolis, but there isn't city, only strange button. You came here not in vain. Of course, the main character clicks on it, but it turns out to be a trap. The player falls into the pool, located in a huge underground spa complex. It turns out that you're completely alone here. Not a single living soul in the area, but what is paradoxical is that the lights are on everywhere. It seems that now crowds of people should rest here, but this is not so. The game can seem quite relaxing. There are so many beautiful pools with warm and crystal clear water everywhere, which is complemented by pleasant lighting, but this is exactly until you hear the local soundtrack, soothing music, playing in the background, but it is reflected by multiple echoes. Sometimes some sounds and even voices are heard. Sound design specifically puts pressure on the player, forcing them to ask quite logical questions. Where could such a surreal place come from? Where is the exit from this complex? And how long do you have to go to get there? It begins to seem that you are not alone here. Something is watching you, but this is not self-deception at all. It is true. A shadow is observing the player, and believe me, it will not just look at you. Animeopolis is a rather unusual horror. There are absolutely no screamers here, and if the game seemed curious to you, you can try it yourself. It has not been released. The release of the first chapter will only take place in this year, but you can play the demo right now. Dear Esther. This is an amazing game, which even can hardly be called a game. First of all, Dear Esther is a heartwarming story told in poetic excerpts from a letter addressed to a certain Esther, which are read by the narrator. The story is complemented by the surroundings of a completely deserted island. A lighthouse is visible in the distance, and without any words you understand that you need to go to it. And while your hour-and-a-half walk will be decorated with the extremely lively landscapes of the island, along with sensual music and a wonderful sea breeze. The game is quite calm and relaxing, despite the constant atmosphere of sadness and loneliness. Absolutely uncool project. But don't forget which video you are on. What is so terrible about this beautiful game? That I put it in the first place. It has only one secret, but it is quite frightening. All your journey, a ghost is watching you. A dark silhouette is observing the player, hiding when it can be seen. Expect this from the heartwarming Dear Esther cannot even come to mind. What the developers wanted to say by this is not clear. But only one thing is clear. Knowing this secret, the game can turn into a real thrill for you, because the walk will no longer be so serene. Well, that's all for today. If you have experienced the feeling of surveillance in any games, be sure to tell about it in the comments. I really would be interested to read about it. Well, if you were interested, mark it like, and then I will know that I tried not in vain. Thank you all, and good luck not catching strangers' eyes on you in single-player video games.